So yesterday we went over arc measure. Okay, arc measure again has to do with your central angle measure. Today we're going to go over arc length. Okay, arc length has to do more with your circumference and being part of that circumference. So just to start off today, I do want to go through a little review of yesterday. So PM is the diameter of circle R. Okay, so PM right here is the diameter. We want to identify each as a major arc, minor arc, or a semicircle, and then find its measure. So number one, what does that have to be? Without even looking at the picture, what kind of arc is that? It's a minor arc. Okay, again, minor arcs are labeled with 2 letters. Okay, so I'm trying to find NM, which is this arc right here. Well, that arc, what's the measure of its central angle?
I can't believe you done this.
So with this arc, what's the central angle measure that creates that arc? 90. Good. Since PM is a diameter, that creates a straight line, which is 180. Since this angle right here is 90, this one has to be 90, so they add to 180. So that means this arc measure is 90. Number 2, we have arc PNM. It is a semicircle. Okay, because your endpoints of that arc are the diameter, and it is 180. So whenever you say an arc is a semicircle, it has to be 180 for its measure. Okay, number 3, I'm looking at arc QPN. So all the way around this way. Okay, I need to know what type of arc that is. It is a major arc. Okay, then I want to know what the arc measure is. It is 205. Okay, so to get that arc measure, I just have to add these 2 together. And I do get 205. Okay? So that's what we did yesterday. We were labeling what type of arc it is and then finding its measure using that central angle. All right. So questions on those 3 problems before I go into our next part of this section here. All right, so today we're going to talk about arc length. Again, it's different than arc measure. Okay, so you need to be sure you're reading the directions if it's asking you to find arc measure or arc length. Okay, arc length is different. It is part of the circumference. Okay, again, circumference is the distance around your circle. So you're just taking part of that distance. Okay, so it is a fraction of the circumference. So a piece of it. Since circumference is a linear measure, arc length is also a linear measure. Meaning you don't have anything squared. Okay, it's not a quadratic. Nothing will be squared when you get your answer here.
Is that an eye?
Where?
Here. I wrote it because I thought it wasn't there.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm like, did I spell that?
All right, so we do have a formula for arc length. It is a fraction times the circumference. That fraction is going to be your central angle. Okay, so we were finding our central angle before, divided by 360. Okay, That's your fraction piece. So we're taking that central angle over the entire circle's degree measure, okay, to find that fraction of the circle. And then we're multiplying by the circumference, okay? So, or you can think about it as this right here. So we have x over 360 times 2 pi r. Okay, this x is your central angle. Okay, and 2 pi r is your circumference. Now, instead of 2 pi r, you could also say it's pi times diameter. Okay? So if you're given the diameter and you don't want to divide by 2 to find the radius and then multiply 2 back in, you could also say this right here is pi times the diameter. Okay? So we are going to go over a few example problems of this. Okay, so we want to find the length, okay, length of arc ZY. So arc ZY is this one right here. So to find arc length, we're using this formula that I boxed here. So we need the central angle. The central angle for that arc would be what? 75. Okay, so the central angle makes up that arc, where it hits that arc at its endpoints. So I have 75 as my central angle. I need to divide that by 360. Okay, now we need to multiply by the circumference. So I'm going to multiply by 2 pi, and then r is your radius. Okay, so r is your radius. So we have to multiply by our radius, which is what? 4. Okay, so we do need to be careful when we enter this in our calculator. Okay, so here's my calculator. I'm going to first take 75 divided by 360. Okay, and I'm going to press enter and get a decimal. I'm not going to write that decimal down. I'm going to leave it on my screen like that. Okay? Then I'm going to multiply, so times what I got, so that answer shows up. Okay? Times 2 times pi. And I do have that pi button, remember? And then times 4. And then equals. Okay, if you say 75 divided by 360 and start multiplying right away without pressing enter, it's going to multiply that 2 pi and that 4 into 360. So you will get an incorrect answer. Okay, so that's why I pressed enter first after I got my fraction. So since I have my answer here, I have it equal to 5.24, and this radius is in inches, so I can write my label in inches here for my arc length. Okay, questions on that first problem there? All right, then we're going to look at letter B. Again, we're finding the length of arc ZY. So arc ZY is this one right here. Okay, so again, I need the central angle that's across from that arc. That would be 130. Okay, so again, that was your x value in this formula here. So I have 130. I need to divide by 360 to get a fraction, okay, of that circle. Then I want to multiply by the circumference. Now I'm given my diameter in this one. Okay? So the diameter is 10. If you want to use 2 pi r, you can. Okay? You just have to say, well, my radius is then 5, right? So I can multiply by 2 pi times the radius is 5. Or I can still have my 130 over 360. Okay, same central angle. But instead of using 2 pi r, I can use pi times diameter because I'm given the diameter. Okay, so I can just take 10, so multiply by 10 times pi. Okay, same thing. So from this point, you can enter it into your calculator. So again, take 130 divided by 360, press enter to get that decimal, and then multiply that right away by 2 times pi times 5, or 10 times pi. Okay, it is 11.34, and since your diameter was in centimeters, your arc length has to be in centimeters. Yep, that's me. Okay, questions on that problem? All right. So on the back, we are going to use circle O to find the length of each arc. Okay, so again, we're finding arc length. That means we're finding that fraction of that circumference. And we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So number 1, we have to find arc DE's length if there is a radius of 2 meters. Okay, so arc DE is right here. Okay, so I need that central angle for that arc. That central angle is 120. Okay, that central angle we have to always divide by our circle's total, which is 360, so we get the fraction of that circle. Then we want to multiply by its circumference, so we want to multiply by 2 pi r. So I need 2 pi, and then they gave me my r value, so my radius is 2. So I can plug in 2 for r. From here, again, enter into your calculator 120 divided by 360, press enter, multiply by 2, pi, and then 2. And I got 4.19. And then what's my label for this one? Meters. All right, I want you to do the last 3. Okay, numbers 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so if you need to, you might have to find that central angle. Use the picture at the right in order to find that central angle.
Yeah.
Well, this is if you're finding circumference.
No, I don't want
Why am I in this? I'm guessing it's Jack because he's laughing.
Yeah, he is. I think you probably will.
Why would you do it with me?
I don't care about the name.
I don't understand that one. So how
This is what you use for these problems. So you could do either or here. So this one should be 5. Your radius is 5. Should be 9. Because I can only 4 years with algebra. Because you are only algebra 4
Yeah. Why? Oh, she was good. I feel like my dad just asked me if I wanted to rock people, and I fucking that also, yeah, it's the shade.
135.
Those are all the
Yeah, because that's what I Yeah.
Okay, this is
Yeah.
usually called.
Do you have questions?
So this
Alright, I need my
this
math
is
sheet.
why-
Yes.
So then this one I have to Yes, I am.
Yes.
But, okay, I'm sorry.
You're falling.
Well, look at 7 if the diameter is 7, then I put 7 times 5. And I got that.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. You'll get the same answer.
Yeah, what it is.
The same process. You have to find BC. So,
Okay, and then it's 24.
and then you're given BE, which is the diameter. So, yep, just 4 and then times 5.
These are the same way.
And I literally have this one,
Better not put it back in there. Put it back in there.
Is the 24? Yeah. 130. What the fuck is why?
Okay, let's just do this.
Back in your mouth.
So there was like pieces of chocolate out that Ferris threw, and Sam picked them up and ate them. Like, after people were stepping on it. He's disgusting.
I was there since second.
Yeah. And he ate it third.
Oh, yeah? That one day you were like,
All right, so with these last 3 problems, I have them set up. So number 2, my central angle for that arc was 210. Shh, we're quiet now, please. Okay, was 210, divide by 360. I was given the diameter, so I made it into a radius. So I could use 2 pi r. If you did 7 times pi, that would work as well because that's the diameter times pi. You should get an answer of 12.83. inches. Okay. Number 3, you're finding the length of arc BC. So again, I was given the diameter in this one. I made it into a radius by dividing by 2, so I could plug it into my formula. And I got 9.42 feet. And then the last one, number 4.
Would it be 3.53?
Okay, I got 7.07 millimeters. Okay, so in number 4, I was given the radius. Okay, so I do need to multiply by 2 using that circumference for that one. Okay, any questions on finding arc length? All right, then listen. Stop what you're doing. Listen to what I have to say, please. Shh. When I hand out your assignments, the first section, you're finding the arc measure. Okay?
What's the measure?
The arc measure is what we did yesterday. Okay, so that's finding the central angle, and the central angle is the same as the arc measure. In the second section, that's where you're finding the arc length. So make sure you are reading the directions so you know which to find because they are different.
Then you can't drive. So I don't know why they would do it. Oh, I drive. I drive up there. It's not even, it doesn't even do anything. It's just my eyes blurry.
It is only one-sided, so work efficiently so that you can get it done and you don't have to worry about anything until Friday for this class.